So the thought was to get together today, and then we knew there'd be an announcement today. We weren't sure if there'd be any answers from that. But first of all, the one thing I'm going to talk on a couple things, and a couple other people have some things. So one is on scheduling. So I've talked to scheduling for next year for the 21-22 season. So I've talked to a few of you. I've had the opportunity in a meeting last week to speak with um, two people at the OUA office that kind of oversee this stuff as the information's coming in as well. So it's no secret information or anything, but just I feel very comfortable with the perspective. And I know that many of you have sent some messages. So there's some, it's on your mind, obviously, as it should be. So the and then there was a survey. So there, I'll go back to that. So a survey has come out from the OUA to the directors with regards to the different tiers of sports. Basically, it's an opportunity to give some feedback on what you think the schedule could look like. Rolly and I chose to just do the survey. We didn't call meetings with each group. The reason is that, in all honesty, like and this isn't putting down the survey, it's just giving our opinion on it. Like the survey seemed to mainly be on, are you still going to be playing? Do you think you're going to be ready to play in the fall? Like there were some other questions about what do you rate? Should we travel less, or should we play more regular season games? And just our approach is we're going to support whatever we can. So if our regulations allow us to, we're going to be in. We're not going to be out of sports, which there is some discussion from some institutions with that. I don't know how real that is. Obviously, I wouldn't know that information, but some people talk that way on the meetings. But we're in, and we answered a lot of things on timelines, meaning, let's give a minimum, 15 days prior to first regular season game, or at least 3 weeks of this, opposed to, like, how in the world can we or you or anyone predict the first day? Like if we're allowed to start on August 15th, that would change your schedule worldly from if you're allowed to start on September 1st, which would change your schedule massively if you're just start on September 15th or October 1st or October 15th. So we took the different approach of trying to predict the state of the pandemic and basically answered all of our questions. We're in, we want to do lots within as much as we're allowed to do. Let's make sure we give the athletes time to train. And that was the kind of premise of our answers. And I can't imagine any of you wanting to do less or any of that. So I would also say from discussions with the OUA is that here's what's going to end up happening. So I think the survey was probably a little bit ahead of itself. The survey to me should have been one question. If there's sport in the fall, are you playing? And do every sport and go through and check yes or no. Because what they're going to do is, let's assume we're allowed to play sport. So things develop, and we'll call it, let's be optimistic, we'll call it September 1st. They're then going to come back and say to everyone who's in, who's out. So that's the first thing. Then they're going to take the scheduling parameters, like, okay, pandemic isn't fixed yet, we're still playing. Obviously, we shouldn't do overnights. So they're going to take the sport, look at the teams, create divisions that would reduce that or eliminate that. It's going to be some consistent approaches. And along the way, they are, at least this is what they're telling the directors, is they were going to then get specific feedback once they know more information. No one today can predict when it's going to start, but once they get some more clarity, then they'll continue to come back with feedback, which is when we will come to you. So when we have some certainty of when we're hoping things happen, we will talk to you 100%. We read through it and we were like, it's kind of generic. We're supporting it. We want to do a bunch. Let's make sure we message that. So if any of you talk to your peers about, hey, how come we didn't do the survey? I'm not sure if any of you are aware of that, but that was our approach that we took. Are there any questions on that or on scheduling? I can say the overall feel on the director's call. So the directors currently and associate directors currently meet about I think it's every 2 weeks now for a couple hours. The feel on those calls is everyone wants to play sport. Like they're all people like you. A lot of them are ex-coaches that just love being around sport and have now become administrators. Everyone wants to play. So it really is, how can we make this happen in the whatever state we're in at that point. The one way that might help you with the perspective, because this is how I've explained it to some of the hockey coach peers, and it's helped them a little bit, is they all think of themselves or ourselves as the OHL and the American League and the East Coast League, because our players come from the OHL and they go to the East Coast League, and hey, they're trying to start, how come we're not? And my comment to them is, unfortunately, that's, even though that's our level of sport, is that we are part of an institution. You need to step back and go, are they letting our professors travel? Can we work co-op terms? Are we sitting in classrooms? Can we go into our gyms? Like, we're just a piece of the university, opposed to a separate piece of the university within our sport model. And so I think that may be helpful to think, unfortunately, the university is part of government, and we're just going to fall under the government directed information to the university, and then we'll fall under that. So we're looking to do lots. I know all of us are. I think this is why coaches are so challenged with this, is we're all wired to be in control. We're all wired to be extremely organized and communicated in advance. And we don't have that under our grips right now at a time of the year where we're so used to doing it. And I'd say just know we're battling to do lots, and just enjoy a bit of time if you can. Maybe enjoy some more time with family than you might normally have, because there's really nothing we can do right now that's going to change it. Okay, so that's, if you have questions afterwards, of course I'll talk, or if you have things that you wish you would ask, just unmute and ask away. So today's announcement, so I don't know if you heard it or not, but they announced that as of the 16th, that the stay-at-home orders will go away in some areas. And then the state of where your region is will be dependent on, basically, on your region's numbers. And they have kind of a mathematical formula, and some of you have probably spent some time reading that. It sounds like we will probably be in red. I think our numbers are getting good enough. There's a slight chance it could be orange, but it sounds like, if you were to play with the numbers and look at the criteria, we're probably going to be in red starting the 16th. Okay, so Monday's the 15th, Family Day. That's reading week for us. And so we actually just had a meeting. Laura was on it, and then Rolly and Ari and myself. So that's our COVID committee, I guess, that we call ourselves. And Adam was there too. So this is kind of tentative, but it's not anything's a secret. What we're leaning at is that week, so the 16th, assuming we move to red, which the announcement will probably come out by Friday this week, is we will start to open up the facilities. From a student athlete opportunity, we don't plan on doing sport specific training that week, but we plan to allow and encourage our athletes to sign up for an open rec, sign up to go into the gym, sign up to do some spin stuff, like get the body moving. Part of the rationale on that, of not jumping right into team stuff, is there are new facility staff that are in place. There's going to be some students doing some stuff they haven't done. The buildings have been closed for quite a long time, and it's just getting back into a rhythm. And we all agreed that made sense. And even allowing our athletes to get into a gym instead of their at-home workouts would be a positive for them. And then the following week, we'll start back with some sport-specific stuff and some S&C based on where, if you have some S&C that's currently under your model. So Hoffer and I are going to be meeting this week. He thought we were meeting on something else, which we will, but we'll also meet and talk through what can that look like if we're in that world of red. So red, I made a few notes just to remind me. So red meant wearing masks while we're training. So that was really the state we finished in. One change that was different than that is we had done 10 total, including coaches. Remember, we had asked our therapists to kind of be in the hall so they weren't taking up a number. We had moved to 10 athletes and 4 staff. So if you have a gym booked, instead of it being 10, including your coaches slash staff, it will be 10 plus 4. Offers 10 plus 3, but it'll be 10 plus 4 for the rest of the areas. So that gave us a little bit more room to work with. And then all of that same messaging that we had before of physical distancing, no touching. One of the rules we made was no defenders, because in most of our sports that have defenders, that's usually when there's likely to be some contact. Again, we have such a wide range that's a pretty generic, but we went with that mindset of no defenders. There is some different messaging that has now come out on some research on how COVID is transmitted. And so we'll probably share some of that in any communication we put with you. So for example, and Laura might want to talk on this when she talks, but she had mentioned this today, that there was, maybe less focus on worrying about touching a railing and more focus on making sure we're not sharing each other's oxygen, how close we are on the likelihood of transmission. So we'll do, or Laura will probably do a little bit more digging to make sure that's communicated well. And then we'll still have the registration, so that you'll have to register and your athletes will have to register and they'll have to tap in. All of that stuff will continue. One thing that's different is that before we as coaches and staff were signing in on the same link as our athletes, but now that we're doing the 10 plus 4, there'll actually be a link for our athletes and there'll be a link for our staff, so that we don't have 14 spots that could potentially have 14 athletes sign up, for example. There'll be a 10 spot for our athletes and a 4 spot for our staff. But we will communicate all this to you. I'm just sharing it because hearing it now, seeing it in writing will probably be helpful. Okay, so before, I know Laura wants to talk for a minute, but any questions about that return to campus training?
Hey, Brian.
Yep.
Facility requests. Are we just using the same requests that we put in before?
Yeah, good one. So Ari and I left the call saying we need to connect, but the way we both remembered it, it's been a while, is that we had built the facility request off of Red. Like for example, like Bert needed a ton of time because he could only, he has 100 athletes, you can only get 10. And he's like, if we can go to Orange, I'll actually need less time. And there was a number of us that way. So I'm pretty sure that's where Fusion in your world sits, and then the message that was communicated to our athletes, but we will confirm that. But that's how we started today, is I think we're in a world where everyone had their schedules based on Red. Yeah. Any other questions on? So I guess on that, what we will do is we'll make sure we communicate that out on the same path we normally do. So I think, Chris, you were sending it to a lot of the coaches, our full-time coaches that access to Fusion. So we'll do the same path we were before, so there's no confusion about communicating the schedules. So we'll make sure we do that as a department. All right, Laura, do you want to talk now?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Hey everybody, it's nice to see you all in your little squares on my screen. It's been a while. Just to kind of follow up with what Brian was saying in terms of the return. So it's been a while since we've all been together. If any of your athletes are mentioning to you that they have symptoms that may or may not be COVID, the long list of symptoms that COVID entails is, it could be any number of things, but if any of your athletes are talking to you and saying that they have a fever or chills or a cough or whatever, please let us know so that we can set them down the path if they need to get tested or not. If they've gone and gotten tested on their own at home or just here in town, they also need to let us know. They also need to let health services know. So if there's a positive test, so I need to know and health services needs to know. There is a COVID hotline that the university has set up. And I can give that to Brian to to send out to you guys. But health services will take that information. They'll connect with Region of Waterloo Public Health. The contact tracing will all be done through them, but the university just needs to know that we have a student that's tested positive. We need to know in therapy land because there's a whole plan in place for them to return. So they don't just get a positive test and then they feel better 2 days from now and they can come back to playing. There's a window of time in which they have to shut down activity, around 10 days. There's another window of time in which they have to be symptom free before they can start any activity. So that's about a 7-day window. So this is similar to our concussion return to play. It's not black and white, it's case dependent, but there is a timeline for them to return. The longer they experience symptoms, the more challenging it is for us to get them back. And they might require further tests. So we don't want to just send back a COVID positive athlete who is now saying they feel better and they go back to practice full go and their symptoms haven't quite resolved yet. So any positive athlete that we may have in the next however many months this goes on, please let us know so that we can walk them through the appropriate return to play and get them the appropriate tests that they may need. Health services is aware of that. They've been able to refer people in the past to get the appropriate tests, and they've also been able to give clearance for athletes to return. So that would be my ask, that you just keep us in the loop, and we can help direct them in whatever avenue they need to go down if they do end up testing positive for COVID. Any questions with that?
Laura, is that like a return, almost like a return from injury kind of plan? Is that kind of the same, not so much transmission of the virus, but like return from injury style?
Well, it's both, right? Like if they are with symptoms, they need to be quarantined. So there is a symptom side of it. But yeah, in terms of returning them back, there's been a lot of studies that are saying that they may seem fine, but then you put them on the court or you put them on the field and they start running around at a higher level and it leads to further heart problems or further lung problems. One of the things that's come up is athletes feeling like they're winded or can't catch their breath, and they're attributing it to the fact that they haven't done anything for 10 or 15 days because they've just been quarantining, but actually it's a sign of something potentially more damaging. So we just want to be aware that, first of all, if anyone does test positive for COVID, but also that we can gradually return them back to activity without just sending them onto the court and saying, okay, like you feel fine, but really you're not. We just want to make sure we keep an eye on it. And there are some documents going around that kind of break it down. Like I said, it's very similar to a concussion return to play, but it's athlete specific. So I don't want to just give you a piece of paper that says this is the way it's going to look, because it's going to depend on each athlete and each symptom that they may have. Does that make sense? Any other questions about that? No? Okay.
Thanks, Laura. One thing I should have mentioned before, and you reminded me when Laura's talked about us gradually bringing the athletes back, is that we talked in our meeting today, and I don't have exact details because one, we're all so different in our sports, but two, we just really started digging our teeth in what it looks like. But we're not planning to say the 22nd. So, okay, so the week of the 16th, after, which is reading week, the athletes can sign up and train and kind of get moving. The week of the 22nd, which is the Monday, where we'll do some team specific stuff. We're not planning on, if your team happened, I don't even know what everyone had, but let's say your team had 4 sport specific and 4 S&C training, to drop in and do 8 workouts that week. Our plan is to phase it in a little bit, and the general thought is to go 2 and 2. Now, not everyone has S&C training that's part of the program, but you get 2 sport specific times as an athlete if we can manage it, and you would get 2 S&C times as an athlete if we can manage it. The challenge is actually the numbers. So, you know, I'll use football again, but it's just reality. Like if Bert wants to get it's 10 hours to get his 100 guys through one time where their feet touch the surface. So we'd have to see if we can accommodate the hours. So in this example, if we were to take men's hockey, which is a roster of say 27, so we can't fit them 2 groups of 10. So I would have to go 3 groups. So I would need 6 hours of training, 3 hours back to back to back one day, for example, in order to get each athlete to train once. So if they train with me twice and with Hoffer twice, then they would get to train 4 times. And so our thought was, and it would also allow us make sure we're back, things are working and functioning, make our facility staff know what they're doing, make sure our cleaning stuff is going well, make sure everything is back functioning. And then we move on to the next stage, which, assuming things go well, would increase again. So exactly what that looks like, I don't know for sure, but it's going to be something a little bit modified than just the full schedule that you had before. I think it's very logical. But we did talk about that today. And again, we're now going to sink our teeth into it and look at some of your schedules, and we're sharing this with you so you can think about it as well.
Just add one more thing, Brian, sorry.
Yeah.
The province also has an interprovincial travel quarantine rule, so to speak. So if any of your athletes are coming from out of province, there's a mandatory 14-day quarantine from when they return. So keeping that in mind, if someone was thinking they could fly into town on the 20th and practice on the 22nd, that's not allowed. So just if you're talking to your team this week, make sure that their travel plans include a 14-day quarantine when they return to Ontario.
And that's even if they're coming from a province that has next to nothing or nothing. It's still, that's ministry, whatever law is. I'm sure it's not a law, but you know what I mean. Okay. So
Brian, just quickly here. So if I was to talk to my guys this week on Zoom, I would say that it looks like we're probably going to go to red in a few weeks. I won't know what our schedule is. I won't know what our access will be yet, but I should know what our allocated court times and S&C times will be in 2 weeks. And then I can share that. Is that kind of what we're hoping for?
Yeah. So you could tell them by Friday, we should know our color. That's what everyone's expecting. We don't manage that, but we'll just be watching an announcement, just like the rest, all of you will be watching the same one, then we'll interpret it. So Friday, we should know our color. Assuming, if you are, say, at a team meeting tonight, assuming we move out of gray or lockdown, then we'll be back training on the 22nd or the week of the 22nd. You could also tell them if they're already here, they'll be allowed, if we're out of gray, they can sign up and go into the gym. They could sign up and shoot hoops. They could go on a spin bike, but they can access the gym area. And then, but I would say real quickly, we're going to be able to, like next week, you'll know what your training times are going to be. You just may have to make a decision, Shane. So if we decide to go, if we use your sport, Shane, this is what we'd like you to do. Have your athletes be on the court with you twice and be in the gym with Hoffer twice. That's what we would like to do for 2 weeks. Then you may have to look at your schedule and see if you need to modify it or not. We're going to work with you as coaches to help that, because you might have an idea, oh, I want to do it this way. I'd love to bring 5 out and do this, or I want to do this. But I would say the court times are really going to be what's in fusion now for our full-time coaches that can access it. It just, the way we left today was leaning at trying to go 2 and 2. And so those of you that are on the call that don't have S&C with Hoffer, then you could still be encouraging your athletes to get into the gym and sign up and do a workout twice a week. And we would do our best to try to get your athletes touching your space that you train on twice a week. Again, if the numbers allow, because 10 really made it challenging. The number of hours, everyone needed more because of 10. Or not everyone, a lot of us need it more because of 10. Does that answer your question, Shane?
Yeah, I think disappointingly, I don't think any of us like to be coached, like how to manage back our athletes a little bit, but I understand like the idea. I just wonder if maybe there's an opportunity for us during the reading week when things are really slow to maybe get some sports in there so facility can set up, take down, have interactions. We can be really patient during the process. I'm not sure if right now our athletes sitting for another 2 weeks is actually safer than being on the court, but I understand what you're saying. So that can work there. So,
but the earliest they could in the current model, the earliest an athlete could use volleyball, the court, is the 16th. So what we're saying is that, let's say a sport specific, is that we're going to do the sport specific the 22nd. So it's actually 6 days from when the current, if we move out of red, if we go with the Monday, the 22nd. So no one can go in anymore right now. The earliest anyone could possibly do something is the 16th if they announce on Friday.
Wouldn't reading break be an awesome time for the staff to learn how to set up the volleyball nets and, you know, for the 5 athletes that we have in town, like rather than shoot a basketball, like serve a ball over the net? And just like, forgive me if I'm not understanding maybe why we would ask them to learn how to set up the net the week that all the students come back.
Well, so my understanding is they can still do that stuff. So they're going to be in doing the cleaning protocols. There's still going to be some open rec stuff. They'll probably do, in a sense, their training, even though it might not be with you as your varsity athletes there, but they're still going to be doing their prep work and feeling they have the facilities ready to roll. So that's like, it's not that they're not doing anything for the week. It's just they wouldn't be doing something with your athletes for that week unless they sign up for an open rec. Okay, so summary on the Excellence Committee. So just a quick update. Many of you are involved in it, but just a quick summary. So the Excellence Committee work was the survey that we did, I think it was right before Christmas time, where we asked for some feedback and we got tons. The engagement from you as the coaches was awesome. So from there, just so you know what's happened is we took the information, we had the original Excellence Committee, which was me, Hoffer, Laura, and Kim Dawson. We went through it and grouped it in different categories. From it, we made 4 subcommittees. We then, the 4 of us each went as a chair of each of the subcommittees. Then we asked for some volunteers, as you would have seen, to join the subcommittees. And those subcommittees have had, I think at the end of this week, we'll have had at least 3 meetings. Some have had some more. And we're getting close to starting to prioritize some areas from the committee so we can start having some real discussions on, okay, what can we do? Where can we go? What do we need? We asked the subcommittees to categorize in groups of, we called it low-hanging fruit. So there's just things that we can change and alter in our processes to make things better right now. Do you need facility space to do it? So you want to hire, you want to do this X training, whatever it is, but we need hours per week. So that was important to know because facilities is always a limitation. Do we need facility wall space? You want to hang something on a wall? What do we need? Is it just money? Hey, we're ready to do this, but we need 10K. So that's another category. And then we asked, is it human resources? Hey, this would be awesome to do, but we need someone to put in 300 hours of work on the historical side of our sports, whatever it is. And then the 6th category was we also wanted to identify things that we think are going well that we want to continue to do. So the subcommittees, we have the Excellence Committee has a meeting this Friday. I think most of the subcommittees are meeting again this week. And I really feel that we're moving along well in this, and just more of an update for those of you that aren't on the committee to know that the survey you did was real and we're still working. And I can't tell you what's going to come out of it yet, but I think we're moving along pretty well with stuff. Chris Gilbert on admissions.
Hey everybody, hope all is well. Just a few updates from an admissions standpoint. Just wanted to, first of all, just reinforce a couple deadlines. One's already passed, and that's the application deadline of February 1st. If you do have, a new recruit that comes across your desk, they want to apply, just come to me, and then I can go and see if that particular program is still open. Usually this time of year, the maths and the engineering, the AFMs are all closed, but the other faculties, there still could be space available, and they'll be open until they feel that they need to close them. So if you have anybody, just let me know. So I'm having a meeting tomorrow morning with admissions. So what we're doing now is just going to go through all the recruits that you've sent me, and making sure that everyone that needs to upload documents, whether that's transcripts for students that are outside of Ontario, or I've been in touch with a number of you that there's still lots of recruits that have not completed their AIF. They have to be submitted by February the 19th. And just, I know I sent out some documents about how to upload everything. If you need that to be resent, just let me know. Just one thing about the AIF, I guess it's a kind of a reoccurring issue with many students, not just student athletes, that students go in there, they start their AIF and they think they've submitted it, but they just save it. So they actually have to complete the whole AIF and then submit. So just if you're in touch with your recruits, just make sure that they do that the proper way. And then this week, I've been told that there should be an upload to the UX system with the quad 2 high school marks. So hopefully by the end of this week, we'll start to get a really good understanding of admissibility on a lot of your recruits. And if we feel, working with admissions that, we can ask for an early offer, we'll do that on a one-off basis. Does that pretty much cover everything, Brian? And we spoke about earlier today.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'd reinforce, and then ask if people have questions, ask them, is the documents being in, especially the AIFs. So I mentioned this in every meeting we've had this year, is that we've had a lot of time spent in the past few years on things that I was calling controllable. So let's take the AIF. So you have a student, so the state men's hockey, we'll pick at them. I've a recruit who has applied, they're in the system. The deadline is the, 19th, Chris, next Friday, a week in 10 days. So let's do the 19th, and they don't have it done. Okay, so it's part of the application process. It's been communicated to them. We're expecting them to do it. So then if they don't do it by the 19th, and then I come in saying, hey, what's up with so-and-so that I'm trying to get in, we're then starting to use energy in discussion and on why their AIF is late, because that's what happens. Well, why didn't they do it? They knew they had to do it. Are they not that interested? Are they looking at other schools? And so we don't have to like that. That's the approach. I'm just sharing you, though, that is what we've spent a lot of time with. So our goal this year was to eliminate those controllables and try to have our energy with the discussions with the higher ups in the registrar's office to be meaningful about an athlete who we really need an early admission for. They applied on time, their AIFs are on time, their transcripts are on time, they're 2% off, and we really want them. That's how we want to spend our energy, not for people that are missing some of the documents or didn't respond to emails. So please encourage your athletes to look at the communication that they receive from the registrar. Please connect with Chris on key ones, and he's done way more meetings than he ever has at this time, trying to stay on top of these details. So any questions for Chris on admissions in the registrar's office? I just remembered Bert asked this question last week when we were chatting about what about a recruit that has a required course that's in the 4th semester. So they're an Ontario kid and they're in the quad semester. So that we've talked about the registrar with that. So there is a chance and a likelihood that the 4th semester courses will not be able to be used and factored into the decision. So that means they would go back to grade 11. So if we take English, so if English is required for every one of our programs and part of the average. So if their grade 12 English is in the 4th quad, then there's a chance they're going to go back to their grade 11 mark. If their grade 11 mark is really good, then obviously we like that. If their grade 11 mark is not really good, then we don't like that. So that is a discussion that you could have now, even though the semester is started right away. If you could have a recruit could get on their guidance counselor big time, because it just started. And if they have a required course in their 4th quad that and their grade 11 mark in that subject area is not very good, then they need to get out of that, or they're going to be stuck using it. And we can all hear, hey, we had to use a grade 11. We're just telling you now that is a really good likelihood that that's going to happen. I don't know if anyone
hey, Brian.
Yep.
That's just for them to evaluate and determine a conditional offer, right? They'll wait for that final grade like they do any other course, right? For it to become an actual offer, right? Like, so
Yeah.
for instance, if they had a 72 in the required course, that's the grade 11 version, right? And all the other marks are good, wouldn't they still receive a conditional offer? And then if they get what they needed, and by the time the marks come out in June, it's the exact same as a regular year?
Yeah, but if they have a 65, if we stick with English, let's give them the 69. So they have under 70, and you were counting on their grade 12 pulling their English up. Yeah, I know I hate English, but I got to do really good so I can get in. That's where it's going to have a big factor. If their grade 11 mark is fine and still allows the average to be created that they want, then it's no problem at all. But it's when it's lower. So if it, in the case, if it's a 69 English, they might not get that offer. And then the spots may be full by the time their grade 12 is done in order to get an offer, especially if depending on the program. It really will. It could mean by the time they get their grade, everything's full, and they want their offer in at this point. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, like here's the insanity of our sport, or of our school. Like you hear Laurentian, right? So it's in the news. I'm not talking behind their back with bankruptcy and stuff. So I was talking to their coach on the weekend. So they actually look at it and go, well, geez, men's hockey, they bring 30 people to our school every year to bring us tuition and fees. So they look at it that way. Our school can look at it, find positive way in sport, but it's not that way. We turn down 25,000 people a year. 25,000 people apply to our school and get denied here. So registration is not an issue here. So that might be something get used in some smaller institutions across the country. But that, hey, we're bringing people to you is not a sales pitch we can use at our school. So unfortunately, that often means stuff like this. Well, we can't guarantee to wait for someone. We might try depending on the program. But I don't think your recruit or you are going to want to play that game if you can avoid it. So if you can't avoid it, then we're going to support you in it. But if there's any way you can not be in that scenario, I would talk to your recruit and try to get them out of that scenario. Any questions for Chris on admissions?
Hey, Brian, sorry, just for a point of reference for the coaches, if you are recruiting anybody, it's Ontario and Alberta that has the quadmester system. So to my knowledge, we have a couple of recruits coming from Alberta too. So just so you know, it's just those two provinces, to my understanding, that have the quadmester that would be affected by that.
Thanks, Bert. So I would just say, like, we're hoping, we think we're on top of stuff. I will say Chris is on top of more. We've had very open discussions with the registrar, not that we haven't in the past, but one of the things that kept coming back is that we weren't as organized as we should be. And that's not pointing at anyone. I've asked Chris, we've talked about, let's go out of your way to be anally detailed on this so that we can just make sure that they can't come back at us and be throwing back, well, they didn't apply, they didn't do their AIF and all that. Now, we've always in our meetings, we asterisk, hey, we're in sport, things are going to happen. We're going to get someone show up on our door past the deadline who's really good. And they're like, we're not saying we'll admit them, but we'll listen to that 100%. What we don't want is the student that applied and was already in the system, they're already on your radar, they've been on our list for 3 months, who won't respond to emails and don't do their work. They're like, that model is but we'll listen to the one you bring to us later. So you can still bring them to Chris as he started with if they haven't applied. But just know that let's get on them. And this is men's hockey as well. We were just as bad as others. Let's get on them to get their stuff done. So that's all that I had. I don't know if there's other questions on anything from returning the sport or anything. Any questions?
Brian, I apologize if I'm taking time to ask. I just really didn't understand the February 22nd week. So we have, let's say for women's volleyball, the last time we talked about the schedule, we had 5 court times. And what you're suggesting is that we determine of those 5 times twice that our athletes can come, or are you guys taking time away from us so that we have 2 court times? Like, I'm just trying to understand what what problem are we solving there, or what does that look like? Are we taking time away, or are we just telling athletes?
So yeah, I guess maybe it wasn't, I don't know, there's an echo there. I don't know if that's me. I don't know if maybe it was not good to share it. I just thought we'll share what our tentative vision is. So I've got to sit down with Hoffer for one and just see, because he and I had lots of talks. I just don't remember exactly what it was. For what does that list of 10 mean? Like how many athletes does he have? How many times? So that's going to be one of the factors is how many times can he get the athletes to, one, be on the floor with him training, the ones that train with him, and how many times does he want them in there? So then we also, when we're prepping, like there's obviously more than just varsity, but when we look at some of the open recs and getting our opportunity for our regular students to come back in and what should it look like, we talked as a leadership group, which I agree with, is that we should phase back in. It's not to tell you you're doing wrong with your training. It's to get everything up and functioning. It's what would be the sense of having, as many out, none of you, I don't think any of us would go and have our athletes on the court or whatever 9 times in a week or 8 times in a week. So why don't we set this up so we can get a schedule decided so that we can then communicate that out on what are the open rec times, what are the other training times, what's potential rental times, because as you know, in discussions before, some rental facilities. So if men's hockey, for example, or women's hockey don't use the ice at the evening time, even if it's for 2 weeks, there's a potential rental that can go in there. So let's set up what the plan is going to be, and then let's look at it as 2-week. I suggest this. Why don't we take 2-week blocks so that we're not constantly sending an email, for example, from me to you to say, okay, for this week, now you're going to change to this model, and this week you're going to change to this model. Is that we say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, you're going to do, for example, you're going to train with your sport twice, you're going to train with S&C twice, and then you'll train 4 times, and then we'll switch over to the next stage, assuming we're able to. The challenge is, and why I'm not really answering probably clear, is that all of you are right now are thinking about your sports, which it could be really clear, but I'm more speaking globally because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, what does that mean to get football on? How many times will badminton want to come through? And thinking of it with everyone. So what will happen, first of all, we'll have to decide this week exactly what the message we're going to do for that week. And then I'll probably end up circling back, and Gilbert will circle back with the different coaches that we often talk to about what that means. So the plan will be in order. It's just, there's not one rule that I can give today that will answer that. So I don't know, it probably doesn't really answer your question other than our plan is to start team training the week of the 22nd. Our plan is to start team training in S&C the week of the 22nd, with less thing dropping full bore and sliding up to going normal. So that's the general vision we had, and what that looks like will be a little different for everyone. The message I said, or the comment I said today when we were talking in our group, is that 2 times would be a good stage to allow our facilities to get back in, allow our athletes to get back in, allow our routines to get back in, and then we work up to where we're going.
Hey, Brian. I'm wondering, for cross-country skiing, we're going to be outdoors all the time. So I'm wondering if we'd be allowed to start earlier since we don't need to use a facility.
Yeah, so That's really good that you've asked a question. So that gives a good scope to the others on the call to realize it's not just our own sport when we think of it. Oh, we think of our team sport. So this is
Yeah.
the exactly why I'm giving kind of overviews of it. So Marley, like my first gut would be is that we want to keep somewhat consistency in our approach.
Correct.
Obviously you could go and train and no one's really going to know, but we then still had the expectation where we do registrations even for our sports that were outside. So I would just like, that's something you and I could talk about, because you're also very dependent on the weather and taking advantage of the opportunity to still have, you know, the ability to do stuff now. So
Yeah, exactly. It's just such a good winter, and we haven't had one in a while, so it'd be good to get the kids out.
So we'll talk to you. We'll chat.
Okay.
Like no one can do, as I said, even in any of the rules that happen, if we change on Friday, the earliest anyone in the province is supposed to be doing anything would be Tuesday. So we're like, it's not like things are happening and we're saying no to it. No one could do a single thing before Tuesday anyways. And so we've got some work to do this week to prep for it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Have you reached any other business?
What's that? Oh, do you want to? Yeah, go for it, Jackie.
Okay. Lauren sent out in Teams today, the OUA BBI committee is doing an anti-racism survey. So you all should have got it. And what I really want to emphasize, it's not for people of color or anything like that. It's for everybody. So there's sections in it that apply to coaches, administrators, and student athletes. So I'm asking if, you know, it took me about 10 minutes, I think, to go through it. So we would really like feedback from everybody. And maybe you don't think you have anything to contribute, but being able to say what your experience has been is important for the survey. So coaches, can you circulate with your athletes as well as looking at filling it out yourself? Thank you.
Did that go to everyone? Thanks, Jackie. Did that go to everyone, Lauren? Our full-time and part-time staff?
So I would have sent it to our full-time staff and to our student athletes, but not to the coaches group. So I can do that because any part-time coach wouldn't have been included.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other additional business? All right. So stay tuned on your email. We will find out Friday what's going on with the announcement, whether we're moving out of lockdown or not. And then we'll do some planning on facility stuff that will reach out. Again, usually it's Gilbert or I are often doing the communication with you as coaches. So it'll likely come out of our inbox and we'll circle back with everyone. All right. Thanks, everyone.